Welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. Time for our weekly Q&A session with me, Andrew Musgrove, and our Newcastle United editor, Aaron Stokes. Thank you to you guys watching live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and of course, you guys listening later on the podcast. If you are watching live, you will see that we have covered a desk and some lovely Everything is Black and White merchandise, a giant banner, and conveniently enough, if you come along to our free live event on Sunday at the Tyneside Irish Centre, you will see this giant banner in person. There's only 25 tickets left for the event on Sunday, which kicks off at noon at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Of course, Newcastle face Manchester City later that afternoon, so it's a perfect way to build up to the game. We'll have Aaron on the panel alongside our chief sports writer Lee Ryder. We'll have John Gibson and the Times' Henry Winter. Like I say, free entry. I'll pop the link into the description and into the comments of the Facebook and YouTube broadcast. Get yourself along. There'll be a chance to raise some funds as well for the Sir Boy Robson Foundation and Fans Food Bank. Should be a great afternoon. We're going to start, Aaron, with the match on Saturday. Another 3 p.m. kickoff for Newcastle United. They drew 0-0 with Brighton. Now, I had said earlier in the week that I expected a draw. I thought two good sides. I thought it'd be an entertaining draw. I didn't expect it to be such a performance that we're sitting here asking just how did Newcastle United manage to come away from the Amex with a point?
Yeah, I agree. I thought, I didn't really think a draw was a fair result. I think Brighton probably deserved to take all 3 points. But Newcastle quite toothless in attack, very, very resilient at the back, but they had to dig deep and they got lucky a couple of times with some goal mouth clearances. And obviously Nick put having a blinder, but we said before the game that Brighton would be a test, much more so than Forest a week earlier. And look, they've came through that test. They've managed to take a point at home, but Brighton with a much better side. Brighton looked a really, really good outfit.
Did we see a performance from Newcastle which just brings everyone down to earth? We were probably all guilty of getting ahead of ourselves after that Nottingham Forest victory, after the victory against Arsenal at the end of last season. Here we face a side in Brighton, which I think is probably where Newcastle should be aiming. Apologies, this season. Good established Premier League side with ambitions of being in that top 10. And they've played Newcastle pretty much off the park. So is it a case of, they've just bring Newcastle United fans down to earth a little bit, and it reminds you that this is going to be a long project for Newcastle. They're not instantly going to be able to bat away the likes of Brighton in search for success in the Premier League.
Yeah, I would think so. I think you've pretty much hit the nail on the head there with what you say, that the back end of last season was obviously so fantastic. They went on that amazing run. They had a good start of the summer with some decent, top level additions. And then obviously last weekend at Forest was a bit of an anomaly given how sort of easily Forest rolled over. It is probably, just a reminder that the feet need to stay on the ground somewhat. I think it's a reminder that the last 2 weeks of the window are crucial, and they need, as Lee Smith's kindly just put on in the comments there, they do need a striker and a winger, or at least some more attacking additions, which Eddie Howe, has spoken about. But yeah, look, Brighton are a well-drilled, organised team. They've had a couple of years now of Graham Potter being able to work with the squad. And look, he's turning sort of average players into really, really good players. The likes of Solly March, Trossard, Pascal Gross, really, really sort of under the radar signings that are turning out to be fantastic players. So yes, I think, Saturday was a good test. I'm glad that they managed to come through it with a point, but it is just a reminder that there's still work to be done before they sort of upset the apple cart.
And we'll get on to transfers later on the show, but David Stratton there puts in an excellent comment here on a live Facebook broadcast. He says, our bench was so poor, no players who could change a game. Howe left his subs late because he knew he had nothing to change it, or he knew he had nothing to change it. We are a couple of players away from a really good side, but at the moment we look really thin. Valid points?
Yeah, completely. I think, look, we've been saying this for about a month now. The club did really well to get some early business done, strengthen the backline, but the focus for the last month to 6 weeks has been on attacking options, and they haven't managed to get any through the door. I agree with David's comment that, you're looking at the bench on Saturday and it's 0-0. Howe's looking for a game changer, and, You left bringing Jacob Murphy on, who look is an honest player. He does his graft, but how many times have we seen him sort of turn a game on its head? So look, they need more depth. They need, I'd say, still an upgrade on Armstrong. They need a good backup for when Wilson's not firing. But look, everybody knows, as fans know it, we've been talking about for weeks. Howe's been openly honest about how he wants one or two more through the door. And I just thought Saturday was a reminder that, they really do need to get a couple of bodies through the door in the next 2 weeks.
David Heron makes an excellent point as well. Who's out there that we can get to bolster the attack? And we seem to say this every single week on the podcast, that when you're looking at options, realistic options, that players you can name who really do have a chance of ending up in the black and white shirt come September the 1st, there's not many people out there. And we were going to say this later on the show, but we'll talk about it now. I think Emmanuel Dennis is a name. Now, he's gone to Nottingham Forest for 20 million, 10 goals last season in a side that got relegated. I can't work out for the life of me why that isn't someone Newcastle would go after. Is he world class? No. But does he solve a problem that Newcastle have got right now? Yes. We know he can do it in the Premier League. He scores goals. He's 20 million within budget, you would suggest. So I do wonder, is it the done character checks on him, maybe doesn't fit into what he wants to do, or is it the other big issue which I think Newcastle are facing, and that is selling the project to players? In terms of, if you're a striker coming in like Dennis who wants to play week in, week out, how can you sell a move to Newcastle when really the main line is, if Callum Wilson is fit, you're going to be on the bench? And I think that's probably a big issue for Newcastle in the remainder of this window.
Yeah, Dennis is a weird one. We know, that Newcastle were offered him and Maxwell Cornet at the start of the window when Watford went down, and it's clearly an option that the club didn't see fit. There has been rumblings about his character, that he was in and out the team under Roy Hodgson at the end of last year, despite, as you say, an amazing record for a struggling team like Watford, and in his first season in the Premier League. 20 mils in the budget. He's 24. I think he's a good backup for Wilson. I really, really can't get my head around the fact that the club haven't sort of pushed for him, because he seems to tick all the boxes, as we've touched on. He would have been a really, really shrewd addition, I believe. I think Maxwell Cornet as well probably would have been before he went to West Ham. I think, obviously me and you were talking before we came on air, and I think Ismail Assar is another one that Watford are probably looking to get off their books, and I think it would be a shrewd move to try and get him in for 15, 20 million. But just going back to your first point, I think, we have been sat here the last couple of weeks struggling to think of names, and, a lot have came and gone. The likes of Calvert-Lewin at the start of the window, that's now out the window. Anthony Gordon looks like Chelsea's probably the option for him. So look, it's difficult. Howe's alluded to that in his pressers. He's made no bones about the fact that the club are struggling. They're trying to sell the project to players, and for whatever reason, it's not happening. But look, I've got faith in Dan Ashworth. I know that they're working ridiculously hard behind, and I think we'll be sat here in 2 weeks' time with two more additions. But it's a reminder to the club and to the fans that yes, they've got this money, they've got this new project, they're playing fantastic football on the pitch, but they're still just that level behind certain clubs, I think.
I mean, it's not easy for any club at the moment to sign a striker. Manchester United being a good example. We saw players they've been linked to recently, they're struggling to bring in forward additions. But again, I thought the performance against Brighton was just another reminder of just how crucial it is to get in a striker, because Callum Wilson had another quiet game. And, as mentioned there in the comments, limited options off the bench, and we're only the second game in. We're not going to push the panic button, but I do think if Newcastle finish this window without bringing another striker in, then there is a little bit cause for concern, because Callum Wilson, he's going to have other games like he did against Brighton where he is quiet, he isn't getting that service, and Newcastle, they need to bring in a striker. They failing to do so is a big blow for what they want to achieve this season, in my view.
Yeah, it is. And I think, we all know this. We've been talking about it for weeks that for whatever reason, it hasn't worked out for Chris Wood. I actually thought Wilson was okay first half. I thought he was probably one of the bright sparks. At the second half, he was very, very isolated. given that Newcastle just sort of just penned in for the last 30 minutes. But we know that, yes, he will have quiet games, and we know that at any moment, another injury can crop up, and we're really struggling. But the club know this. Eddie Howe knows this, and I think there's a lot of talk of centre midfielders and potential other options with Shelvey's injury. But I think the club are fully focused on making sure that it's a striker that they bring in, and they need, and that's what it should be. That is their priority.
Wilson had a goal disallowed. Did you think it was deservedly disallowed? Just explain to the listeners, remind them what went down.
Yeah, so Wilson obviously flicked the ball over, I think it was Lewis Dunk's head. The foot was very high, but Dunk was a good sort of yard off him. I thought the one thing that I wasn't really happy about that decision was the fact that Wilson's flicked over his head, he scored, and straight away the referee's blown up before the ball's already in the net. Brighton's players have all stopped. I think if you just let that run on, let the goal stand, let the play continue, then VAR can have a look at it. Because I think I'm not sure whether VAR would have ruled that out. I think, given how far Dunk was away, I think on a certain day you might get given that. But look, it's one of those. It was, I think even if that goal had stood, I don't think Newcastle would have deserved to win from the manner of their performance. So it's just one of them. But as I said, I thought Wilson looked okay first half. Miggy looked okay first half. He had a couple of chances. Maxi was a bit off the boil again, which was a shame to see in a game like that. But that Wilson one was a bit disappointing, just given that the referee didn't sort of allow play to move on. One
man who was certainly on his game was Nick Pope. Obviously, he became a social media trending star on Friday and Saturday thanks to Toon Proles. And then he went into that game against Brighton. And without Nick Pope, Newcastle would have lost that game. 3 fantastic saves. There was 2 cleared off the line one by Trippier and 1 by Cher. But let's just concentrate on Pope's performance first off. He's come to Newcastle with an eye on that World Cup squad. Mm-hmm. He knows he's got a quality keeper in Dubravka right on his tail for the number 1 spot. That is a fantastic performance, and it justifies Eddie Howe bringing him in. It justifies Eddie Howe giving him the number 1 spot. Wake Southgate maybe as well to competition for Jordan Pickford, but just a brilliant performance. And this is the reason we're sitting here saying Newcastle are still unbeaten this season, because of what Nick Pope did on Saturday.
Yeah, definitely. And look, he proved me wrong, because I sat here on Friday afternoon and he became this viral sensation, and I was just sat there thinking, he's going to drop a clanger tomorrow, is he? It's going to come back to bite. Everyone tweeting about him. He's going to have a stinker. But look, he had the complete opposite. Man of the match performance. And a real sort of statement, of he's came in, he's been given a nod over Dubravka, which was a tough call for Howe to make. Could have easily backfired. And if, we could have been sat here thinking, why did he drop Dubravka when he'd done nothing wrong? But look, Pope's, he's laid down a marker. I thought he was brilliant. On Saturday, really, really good. 3 sort of big saves in the second half. Demanded that area and sort of looked really, really assured. So yeah, really good performance from him. And I think it's sort of justified Eddie Howe's decision to take that gamble and drop Dubravka.
Other performances we mentioned there, Trippier had cleared one off the line. Again, I mean, I only saw highlights, didn't see the full game, but from what I did, so it was mostly Brighton getting down that side and Trippier just looking a little bit off the pace still.
Yeah, Brighton had quite a lot of luck in that second half down their left-hand side. When they were sort of finding gaps, they brought that youngster Karu Matoma off the bench. Young Japanese lad, looked really, really good, and he was testing Trippier. But look, I thought Miggy did well. He covered him well. But I thought it was just a good defensive performance. Trippier's a weird one because, as you say, he probably wasn't at his best on Saturday. He was a little bit off the boil against Forest. I thought he looked didn't look like he was sharp. He didn't look like he was at match fitness. And look, it's early days. I don't want to sort of start calling them out, but it's just maybe want to keep an eye on.
I think it's important to assess each individual, and we're going to get onto Bruno Guimaraes in a moment, because for all these players perform well towards the end of the last season, we can't sit here and you guys can't listen to this or watch this and we brush away bad performances or average performances. We're here to assess, we're here to analyze what goes on. And this is, in my opinion, the second week in a row that Trippier has been below par. It's partly because he set the bar so high, but we wouldn't be doing our jobs if we just go, oh well, just another weekend. Next week against City, he'll be back to his best.
Yeah.
We've got. I think that's what we're doing. And I mean, we had this discussion before we came on air about the defense, and it might have been the match of the day edit that I saw, and it didn't paint Newcastle in the best light, but it just seemed at times a little bit schoolboy defending, rushing out of the ball, everyone going to clear the ball. And, Eddie Howe said they were unified and they dug in, which is brilliant, but he won't want to be having that sort of defensive performance every week, will he? You want to be more dominant.
Yeah, and it wasn't the type of performance that you really want to see 7 days before you play
Manchester City.
So Haaland and Grealish are probably licking their lips after Saturday. But look, I think Howe was right to say that there were, at moments they were assured. They came under a lot of fire in that second half, and we were talking about this before. I think 12 months ago that game when I finished 3 or 4-0 at Brighton. I think there's a different sort of aura about that defence now. They've got a good working relationship, and I think one thing that we haven't touched on yet is the fact that that defence, for all Dan Burn has played at left back with Brighton, it was a big call replacing him. Replacing Target with Dan Burn and dropping Botman straight in. I thought it was a weird one. We didn't really get any sort of rumblings of Target's knock. Howe didn't mention it in the presser last Friday. So it was a bit of a surprise, sort of an hour and a half, 2 hours before the game, to hear that Target might actually be missing. But I think for sort of that makeshift defence where Burns having to play left back where he hasn't played for a year, I think credit needs to be said, to him for that. I thought it was a good defensive display given how much they were, sort of under pressure in that second half.
And do you think Matt Target will be back and fit and ready to go for Manchester City?
Yeah, I mean, from what we heard on Saturday, it looks like sort of a dead leg or a minor sort of hamstring issue, which we don't expect to keep him out big, sort of a long term. We'll probably know more about it when we speak to Howe later this week. But I think they've got an option now there. If Target is missing Saturday, or maybe not, maybe Saturday's a bad example because I can see them maybe going 5 at the back against City. But let's say further down the line, further this season, Target's out again. Burns shown that he can play left back over the likes of maybe Dummett and Richie, who are maybe sort of not as sharp as they used to be. But yeah, I thought Burns was assured at left back.
Botman, as you mentioned there, made his full debut, played 90 minutes, 39 passes, 4 duels won, 4 clearances, 1 clean sheet, 7 recoveries. How do you think he did?
Yeah, really, really good. And I think Howe likes to ease these players in. We saw how well it worked with Bruno, but I don't think that's as needed with Botman. I think he looks assured, he looks ready. I thought he looked ready against Athletic Bilbao in that final pre-season game. So yeah, look, he looks fantastic. He's slotted in early doors. Look, it'll be just a different test altogether on Saturday against City, but I think as a full Premier League debut goes, when you're sort of under the cosh like that, I thought he handled it well.
Got John Gandhi there saying major bonus for Burn at left back is that lofted balls to the back post are less likely to be problematic. You mentioned Alan St-Maximin there didn't have the best of games. We've spoken about this before, but is he a danger of becoming a bit of a scapegoat? When he doesn't perform, people will get on his back and it's more noticeable because when he does perform, he's one of the better players in that side.
Yeah, I think it's sort of the Bruno effect, isn't it? You always notice it more when he has the rare off game. Admittedly, with Maxi, it's not really a rare thing. He does sort of drop these type of performances where he goes missing every couple of weeks, which, as we've touched on, countless times on this podcast over the summer, is the main thing that he needs to change this season. He can't go missing as often as he does. And I mean, there's comments that I'm reading here from various people asking about whether, Chelsea and Tottenham are going to be sort of tempted by a £40 million bid. I think if you're a scout at the Amex on Saturday, you're thinking, no way is he with 40 million. Just has this tendency to go missing. And yes, Saturday's game wasn't probably played to his style. Newcastle didn't have too much of the ball, especially in that second half. But, this is what I think. Maxi needs to adapt his game so that he needs to be having an impact in these type of games where it's 0-0 and the game's on a knife edge. But He's so frustrating, but I can't see the likes of Chelsea or Tottenham being tempted this summer.
You mentioned there Bruno Guimaraes. He came out and said it was far from his best game. That was clear to see. Really, really guilty of giving the ball away far too often in the middle of the park. Guilty of just being a bit slow. He allowed players to get a foot in on him and win the ball. Again, partly because he's probably set the bar so high. Were you shocked at his level of performance against Brighton?
I don't know if shock's the right word. I think we forget, isn't it, that he's human, and we've been blessed really the last 3-4 months that he hasn't really put a foot wrong, and we're sat here every week and I always say, I'm sick of praising him. Well, I'm actually sort of glad that, we've had a reminder that sometimes, I thought Brighton set up perfectly on Saturday. They didn't give Newcastle an inch. They didn't give Bruno an inch in that midfield, and he looked isolated. I think Shelvey was a miss. I think Shelvey does that role where he sits and sweeps really well. And I think Bruno's better when he's probably used a bit further forward in that 8 role, which we didn't really see on Saturday. But
so could we see for City? I know it's not ideal, so we'll maybe bypass City and we'll go to the game afterwards. Could we see, it's Wolves, isn't it? Could we see maybe Longstaff come in, play that deeper role, then you've got Bruno and Joelinton ahead of him?
I'm surprised that Longstaff didn't actually get a chance from the start on Saturday, because I thought, Willock against Forest was a bit, look, he had an okay game, but he didn't pull up any trees. I think Longstaff offers a really good balance. I think we've seen in pre-season, him and Bruno seem to strike up quite a good partnership together. And obviously when you've got Willock who likes to go forward, I think, as you've said, Longstaff sort of offers a bit more protection further back. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him get a chance. But I think Shelvey's going to be a big miss. I really do. I think he looked sharp in pre-season, and I think, just like I say, having him as that anchor, as he has been the last couple of months, it's going to be a big blow.
Just getting back to Wilson, we said he had a bit of a quiet game. I've seen comments from people saying he needs to do more off the ball, but is it a case he's just not getting the service to him? You said he became a bit isolated in the second half. What can he do to resolve that? Because he obviously wants the ball, he wants to get involved, but if Newcastle have got their backs to the wall, it's very difficult to get out. Is that a case? Was it a case that Newcastle just had an off day, they needed to defend, that results in Wilson becoming isolated, or was it Newcastle are lacking something in that team which feeds the ball to him?
I think it's a bit of both. I think, look, it was an off day, given that Newcastle had, a lot fewer chances. Brighton restricted them going forward, especially in that last 30 minutes. So I think it was just one of those days when Newcastle aren't, sort of flowing going forward. But I also think that this is what we're talking about. We need players that are going to replace Maxi and Miggy in the long run to be able to turn that game on the head and, sort of bring something out of nothing and actually be able to turn these defence, this defending into attacking, really. And I just thought that, Maxi wasn't doing that. Almiron wasn't really doing that. And I think that's where Wilson has those quiet days. But, we saw against Forest when Newcastle are in full flow and they've got a lot of the ball and they're, sort of building in confidence, his moves in and around the box are perfect. So I think it was just an off day, really, rather than Wilson needing to do more.
We've got to get that balance, haven't we? When they perform well, not got to get ahead of ourselves. When they have an off day, not got to get too down in the dumps. That's the important bit.
I think it's very, very easy to get, sort of down in the dumps about Saturday's result, but it's 4 points from 6. They were very, very good at the back. As we said a year ago, that wouldn't have been a draw. And a little stat for you, it's the first time Newcastle have taken 4 points or more from their opening 2 games since 2012. So, good start.
Got John here saying it's tough for Wilson as his forward partners are largely St. Maximin and Almiron. They're not link-up type players. They run around a lot and are unpredictable. Fair comment?
Sort of, yeah. But I honestly thought Maxi had turned the corner against Forest. He was giving the ball quicker. He was linking up a lot more, which is why it makes it so frustrating that he's sort of had a backward step and was sort of quite anonymous. Look, Maxi and Miggy, it's a big couple of months for them. It feels like we're always saying that, but the club, I wouldn't be surprised if the club signed another really, really top level wide man before the end of this month, which out of the two of them probably means Miggy drops out, but there's nothing to say that they won't sign another in January, and that means Maxey's out. He's fighting for his place at the minute.
Again, but I think it's important to get that balance as well, isn't it? When he has a good day, don't get, again, too far.
Too excited.
You know, it's just one of those, just having that balance. We've got quite a few comments coming in. We've got Andrew Palmer here saying, can't believe we're in a league where you can't get a world-class player for less than 40 million. How lucky were we with Trippier? And we've got quite a few people talking about the link-up or the story that Amanda Staveley and Midad Gadusi were at Stamford Bridge yesterday to see Spurs take on Chelsea. They were apparently a guest of the new Chelsea owner. But a lot of players potentially in that Chelsea squad, which you could see Newcastle holding an interest in. A lot of people have already picked out a few names. We'll start, I think, with Brozier. He's a man who's been linked repeatedly on loan at Southampton last season. He scored 6 goals, a young man. Wanted by West Ham, apparently didn't go because he didn't get the first team assurances. It comes back to what I mentioned earlier in the show, I feel, that any striker that comes in, I think is going to be well aware that if Callum Wilson is fit, he's likely to play second fiddle. Will Brozier, give up that demand for first team football that he apparently had in talks of West Ham to come to Newcastle?
No, I personally don't think he will. I think the big thing about him leaving Chelsea this summer was that he wanted to be number one somewhere else or be given a good shot at Chelsea under Tuchel. He hasn't started for Chelsea this season, but he's played in both games. He came on yesterday against Spurs. So I would be very, very surprised if he comes to Newcastle unless, they've said, well, you're going to be number one, and I just can't see him coming in over Callum Wilson.
Another name is Conor Gallagher. I'm a big fan of him, but I'm sitting here and I'm just scratching my head thinking, where does he fit in? And I mean, the first question I'm going to ask you, Aaron, is it a case that Newcastle United fans, and I'll include myself in that, just have to maybe get past the fact that it's not necessarily about a position being free and needing to be filled? It's about bringing in a quality player who will, bring the level up, and that's regardless if you've got 2 or 3 people fighting for that same position.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because we had a similar conversation the other week about Maddison. Fantastic player, would improve Newcastle no end, but is he what they need this window? Look, Conor Gallagher's a fantastic player, but we know that he's sort of in that Maddison sort of role of a 10 and he likes to be central, when really I think Newcastle are really struggling to get bodies through the door and they need players that are happy to play out wide, which, if I'm honest, I'm not sure if Gallagher will, or they need a striker. So I agree with you. I'm a huge fan of Gallagher. Everybody who's ever coached him or any fans who have ever watched him play for their team believe he's different gravy. I know a lot of Crystal Palace fans who were absolutely raving about him last season and really, really wanted him to stay. It just depends whether Newcastle need him in the next 2 weeks. I think that's what it boils down to.
You mentioned Maddison there. First 2 games for Leicester, he has sent a reminder of why Newcastle United want to sign him. He's been absolutely superb, and just the way he gets into the box, the way he can pick a pass, the way he just gets it on goal, and that's what's something I think Newcastle are missing. That they're missing a constant goal threat from midfield. And again, you mentioned there we had this conversation where I think we both said, where exactly does he fit in? But them first 2 games, I've been so impressed with him. And we could see yesterday on Saturday when Guy Lineker was talking about Leicester, he told Michael Richards to shut up and stop trying to sell James Maddison. He knows how good Maddison is for his Leicester side and what a player he is. I've just been so impressed with him the past couple of games, and I can see why Newcastle may go back in with another bid.
Yeah, look, and I want to sort of reiterate the fact that Maddison and Gallagher would walk into this Newcastle team. They would. I've got no doubt that if either of them signed, they would play over Willock and add goals to midfield. I just want to sort of stress that the reason I'm not sort of crying out for them now is because I feel like the priority needs to be further up the pitch. But Maddison over the last 2 games has really, really sort of sent a message just to say that, one, he hasn't been put off by this transfer talk. And really, any club that gets him, whether it's Newcastle or Arsenal or Leicester keeping him, he's a fantastic player. It's an absolute wonder he hasn't got more England caps and he's not highly rated. He walks into most teams in the Premier League, and I think it's a real shame that Newcastle sort of couldn't get a deal done from early in the window.
Got Geordie Toon for life saying we do need midfield players that create and score goals. Willock, Gillett and Longstaff don't get enough. Totally agree with that. Few people asking there about Puzzlick would be from Chelsea. You say David says he would be a real statement of intent. Other people asking, is he the answer?
I think he would. I personally think he would be. I think if they manage to get Pulisic on loan over the line, which potentially there's talk today that he's one of the Chelsea players in a long list that Newcastle are eyeing. I think he walks into that team over Miggy, and I think he brings that level up. He'll have one eye on the World Cup. Captain in the USA, he's going to want regular minutes, which doesn't look like he's going to get at Chelsea. So look, Pulisic for me would be near the top of the list. I would love to see him at Newcastle.
But if Chelsea are willing to let him go, I mean, again, I suppose it comes to kind of bringing down the expectations at Newcastle side. But he's another one. I mean, doesn't he really set the Premier League light to be that excited if he arrives at Newcastle?
I don't think he's set the Premier light. I think he has been a little bit of a I wouldn't say a failure, but he probably hasn't hit the heights that many expected him when he joined Chelsea from Dortmund. But look, I think the talent's there. I think you have to watch him for USA and see that he really is a top player. And look, as game time's been very, very limited at Chelsea. They've got a lot of players in those positions. Hamek, Ziyech, Conor Gallagher, Hudson-Odoi, a lot of them, Werner before he left. So maybe he just hasn't had the minutes. Maybe with a couple of games under his belt, he'd be better. But as I said, I would love to see him at Newcastle.
A few other names from Chelsea that have been mentioned. As you mentioned there, Hudson-Odoi is another one. You a big fan of him. I mean, you don't think Mana Staveley and Medad Kudusi being at Stamford Bridge was a coincidence, do you?
No, I don't think it was any accident that they were there yesterday. Obviously, we know that Staveley specifically has got very, very close links to Chelsea. She's on good terms with Todd Bowley. They've spoken at economic forums and stuff together. They clearly go back a long way, but there's no way that was an accident yesterday. We're hearing that they were invited there by Chelsea, but I'm sure there was definitely some transfer talk going on. And as we've mentioned there, we've reeled off 5 or 6 names that Newcastle could have really realistically signed from Chelsea. And look, I think Hudson-Odoi would be a good addition. He can play down the right, down the left. He's young, he's hungry. If he can stay fit, he'd be a very good addition. We're hearing today that he won't be involved with Chelsea's youth team tonight, which he was scheduled to be. So it looks like a move away for him is sort of nearing its conclusion. I think out of the players that we've mentioned so far, I mean, Gallagher's fantastic, but I think Pulisic would be my number one, and I think I'd like to see Hudson-Odoi as well.
Christmas list's looking lengthy, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe being a bit too ambitious.
To you guys watching live, do drop into the comments out of those Chelsea players we've mentioned, who you would like to see come in realistically would be on loan. You would think Newcastle have got a real good chance actually of taking advantage of the loan market. I think if we do see 2 or 3 more coming in before the window closes, it will be largely down to the part of signing a loan player here or there, as it did with maybe Matt Target, just getting a bit of a taste for what a certain players like, and if they like them, maybe going back after the deal ends. We've got Mark Robson saying get Ivan Toney back. Gallagher definitely in. He would score loads of goals. We've got Roger Cook saying Madison's price won't come down much. Paqueta, he wants Paqueta in. He says he thinks he would definitely be the answer. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of names flying about the place, isn't it? It's just about timing and budget.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, another one that we reported earlier this morning was Gonzalo Ramos from Benfica. Lee Ryder had a very good transfer line from him this morning, saying that Newcastle have been told that the door's still open for him. The player himself sort of came out the weekend and said that he was happy at Benfica, but I'm sure money talks when that's involved. And I think if the right bid comes in, Benfica will probably be open to selling him. Did really well last season alongside Nunes. Scored against Newcastle early in the summer. He could be an option up front. fits the profile as well, young, proven in Europe. I think that could be one to watch in the next couple of days.
Would that be a bit of a statement sign, anything?
Yeah, I think that would be a huge statement sign. I think it would probably take 40, 50 million to get him away from Benfica. That begs the question, does he come in and play second fiddle to Wilson? I'm not sure he would. Does it mean sort of a change in formation where he plays two up front? We know that's not really Howe's style. But look, I think there's still wiggle room for one sort of big marquee signing before the end of the month.
Geordie Tune for Life saying Ramos, Gallagher and Paqueta, instant improvement. 2 out of those 3, please. Pulisic on loan, Paqueta and a striker. Job done, says Lee. Madison would be amazing, but Leicester will do everything to keep him. I mean, a lot of people there saying 3 rivals. Is that realistic?
Given what they've done in the last 6 weeks, no. I think it's probably only going to get harder towards the back end of the window when the haggling starts coming out. If I had to put a number on it, I think 2. 3 would be amazing. I think they'll probably get 2 in.
And a lot of people asking what would a failure be this transfer window? If they don't get a striker in, is that the biggest failure?
Yeah, definitely. We sat here in May, we sat here in June, we sat here in July, and we sat here now saying if they don't sign a backup to Wilson, then they're in real trouble. Look, I really like Chris Wood. I've said it before, but for whatever reason, it just isn't clicking for him. That would be the biggest failure for me. I think you can maybe excuse not getting another winger in. We've got Fraser, you've got Miggy, you've got bodies there at least. But I think not getting another striker would be criminal the next 2 weeks.
What exits as well? I mean, is there anyone you can see going out? Because that's also seemingly stalled. But I mean, actually, when you think about it, off the top of my head, I can't see anyone who I would necessarily say, yeah, or at least I wouldn't push anyone towards the door.
No, I don't think there'll be any big name first team exits. If I'm honest, I don't think Newcastle really have any assets that people want. I think Maxi's the only one you could maybe say. But if I'm honest, I just can't see Tottenham. I don't think Tottenham need him after signing Richarlison, and also the wing back situation. You're usually never going to get Miggy to play there. And I can't see Chelsea if they're going to buy Gordon. Other than that, first team wise, obviously Bruno, yes, would walk into my team, but Newcastle aren't going to sell him. Exit wise, I think I can see one of the 4 goalkeepers going. One of either Dubravka, Darlow, or Gillespie, maybe. Then, other than that, you're looking at maybe Fede Fernandez, Matt Ritchie, Jamar Lewis, sort of fringe players. Matty Longstaff, I think, will go on loan. Elliot Anderson, I'm still on the fence. I think he might stay. Depends on what they do in the market.
It's going to be an interesting one to watch. Jonathan asking, what day is Man City on? It's Sunday, 4:30 kickoff. Once again, we have a live event on Sunday morning for you guys to come along to before that game. David Langford asking, is there any future for Jamal Lewis at Newcastle United, and is Matt Ritchie going to stay? So you said that you could see Matt Ritchie potentially heading out. I think it would require Matt Ritchie to force a move. I don't think Eddie Howe would want to necessarily sell him. I don't think he's under any pressure to sell him. He gives that experience, which is quite crucial. Jamar Lewis is an interesting one. I mean, if there's one player I would love it to work out for, it would be Jamal Lewis. I just think he's had such a tough time of it. But again, he's picked up another slight knock, hasn't he? I just can't see it working out.
I think time's running out. I think obviously when he got left out the 25-man squad, a lot of us thought that was game over for him. Howe's obviously given him another chance and said, get yourself fit, show what you can do, but just doesn't seem to keep himself fit. Howe did say last week that he's been training, he's getting closer to returning, but Matt Targett's not going to lose his place very easily, and when he does, Dan Burn can slot in there. So Lewis, really, I think time is running out. I think you probably stay beyond the window because Howe clearly likes him, but I can't see him really forcing his way into the plans anytime soon.
Certainly going to be an interesting one to watch. Some lovely comments coming in from our readers, which I won't bother repeating. But thank you for getting involved anyway. Thank you to you guys watching live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and listening later on the podcast channel. Please remember to like and follow the podcast through your podcast provider and leave us a rating and review. just helps us get the episodes out to a wider audience. And once again, a reminder of our live event up at the Tyneside Irish Centre on Sunday. Free entry. There'll be some raffle prizes to raise some much needed funds for the Sir Robson Foundation and the Newcastle United Fans Food Bank. Hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Do head over to chroniclelive.co.uk, where we'll keep you up with all the latest Newcastle United news, including our daily transfer live.